Hi everyone, I'm Nat. I am the head of community at Exceptional Individuals, and today we are looking into Dyspraxia Assistive technology. As I mentioned, we always talk about assistive technology, but we normally look at it from a dyslexia perspective and not so much dyspraxia. Now, obviously, we know they kind of interlink in a lot of ways. However, there are some unique challenges which people with dyspraxia may face that those with dyslexia may not. So I have been doing a deep dive into all the tech available, and there are going to be a couple of techs and equipments that I'm sure you are more than aware of, but I've done my best to find a few hidden gems which you may have not considered before. Katie says she has Otter and would recommend it. That's good to know. So as mentioned, we support people who are neurodivergent. Doesn't matter how your brain thinks, whether it's dyslexic, dyspraxic, autistic, ADHD, we support you. So feel free to get in contact. We're a lovely team of neurodiverse individuals. I have dyspraxia myself, so a lot of the software that we're talking about today, I actually use. Let's look at some Dyspraxic Assistive technology. Now, I don't want to put any ideas in your head to begin with. So I want you to just say, what assistive technology, if any, do you currently use? And if you are just someone who's, not just, but if you are someone who supports people who are dyspraxic, but may not have it yourself, tell me what software you normally recommend or support people with. Because it would always be good to know, are we on the same page? Because at Exceptional Individuals, yes, we work with people on a day-to-day basis, but sometimes naturally, if we're recommending similar things each day, you can kind of fall out of the loop a little bit. So it's always good to stay ahead of the trends and know what other people are using and finding useful. Siri, yes, Jenny, I completely think it is. I use Alexa all the time, and it's really useful for just finding the time, reminding me for updates. We got Dragon, Read and Write, laptops, Read and Write Gold, a timer app for cooking, absolutely. I use HelloFresh at the moment, and they got a cool app that kind of guides you along step by step, really useful. I know April was a big one of that as well. A Loud app, I've not used that. Cutlery, yeah, I have special cutlery that kind of put my fingers in. It sounds odd, but yeah. Phone instead of post-its, brilliant. None for dyspraxia. A percentage calculator, MindJet, but I haven't had enough chance to explore it, but I definitely want to. Katie says Dragon can't understand me very well. That is some of the downsides. And just so you all know, I'm not sponsored by anyone today. I wish, but I'm not. So everything I'm going to recommend is going to be completely honest. So I'm going to say what's good about it, what's not good about it, and feel free to share your own views, both here and there. So April says, yeah, I use to HelloFresh and remember the timer in that app. I prefer to use a timer plus that allows me to use multiple timers. Yeah. Heat reactive mugs to tell me when my tea gets cold. Do you know what, Joe? That's such a cool idea. I never thought of that as a thing to support you. You know those mugs where you kind of like they're black and when you get them warm, the picture appears. So the first thing is touch typing software. And this is a bit of a wild card because a lot of people might not consider this assistive technology, but touch typing is basically teaching you how to type effectively. Because if you're anything like me, I type like 1, 2, 3. I'm just like stumpy, just stumping with my fingers, and that is kind of what we learned through at school. Just because I'm just old enough to remember that computers were only introduced when I was in school. Like when I started primary school, they weren't a thing. I remember we had one computer in my last year that we had to share, so we didn't really get to learn it. But touch typing is a method which allows you to use all your fingers for the optimal experience. And being able to get every finger to have a mind of its own is really difficult. I only am able to use like one at a time. So you can get different software that can actually teach you to be better at typing. Fun fact, if you like Pokemon, I think there's even a Pokemon game on the DS that can help you to type. I can't recommend that though, but still pretty cool. So do look this. You can also get keyboard coverings for your, like say if you have a Mac that has all the different colours on. So as you can see here, your left index would only do QAZ, or your index finger would do RTFGVB. Okay, Joe says, yes, touch typing for kids is really great to get the best impact from IT use. I would say, it's really difficult, in my opinion, to learn to touch type retrospectively, but if you're learning for the first time, it's probably a good use. Okay, so next we're going to look at electronic copies of textbooks, so e-readers. You may have heard them for like Kindles or Kobos. They're essentially just a digital book. And they're really good because, yes, you could use a tablet, but they can be really bad for your eyes and it can cause a lot of strain. And you may not know this, but your computer screen emits a blue light, and that blue light can cause a lot of fatigue. I lose so much. All like medical records, anything that still comes in paper form. So by having it on a e-reader, it allows me to always have access to it. It allows me to not get distracted, because that's the thing with a tablet. If you have something that does everything, play games, you're probably going to play games on it. Having a device which is only made for one set thing does help to keep you on track. So Joe says, getting school books on the computer is a real help for dyspraxic kids. Lightens the load. Yep, it definitely lightens the load. Carrying can be, not the best for people with dyspraxia. If you've got a whole rucksack, it can damage your back. It can also just be more things to misplace and lose. Let's just say in school books, people don't really like you doodling over their books. But if it's your own ebook, you can do whatever you like. Now, these can be expensive, okay? But you honestly can get them for about £60, the cheap ones, or like 200 for the more expensive ones. It kind of like varies. But I would say it's a good investment if you enjoy reading or you have a lot of paperwork or documents. Now, I'm going to be mentioning a lot of things today which are expensive. I can't lie about that. But we are going to be talking about the government grant, but there are other means of getting it. Oh, this one is a hidden gem, which I bet a lot of you haven't heard of or thought of, is a sticky note or post-it note printer. One of our old colleagues, Tony, had this, and at first I thought, what a ridiculous idea. It's a digital post-it note printer, but actually it makes so much sense. So, post-it notes, people are always recommending for people with dyspraxia, because you can write on them, post them up, and help you remember. So this is really good. What you do, you have an app on your phone, and you can, for instance, write a note either digitally or with like a little stylus, and you push a button and it sends it to your little printer. I don't know if anyone's used these. Here's a little video of a different one. I know Amazon has one version, but there's a few different suppliers of it. Chantel says, I have a love-hate relationship with them. I would love to know why. Does anyone have a portable scanner? Yeah. And why these things are quite good, because yes, you can put labels and stickers on, which I help organize my chaotic world, but just being able to say your to-do list. Yes, some people like having it in a digital form, but other people prefer a more physical option. Or if someone has asked your number, maybe you have it already preloaded and you can just push print and give it to them. You might think it's less environmentally friendly, and I suppose you're probably right, but for some people this could be an absolute game changer. Yeah, it's just a portable post-it note printer, and yeah, they're actually pretty good for some people. Not for everyone, but for some people. My next one is the Robocop of mouses, an economic mouse. Oh, ergonomic. And essentially, all mouses look like kind of like a mouse, and they are okay, but it requires quite a lot of motion. And if you're someone with dyspraxia, sometimes like multiple motions or like big actions can be a bit disorientating. So I'm not saying it has to be this particular mouse. So you know how you can get special knives and forks where you can like put your fingers in for people with dyspraxia, or like you might have Velcro shoes instead of laces. They both do the exact same job, but it just makes it more accessible for those who might struggle in the more mainstream way that they are created. So what makes these mouses special is that it can stop your wrist aching because it's at a more natural position, because that issue can like kind of cause a lot of strain. But the most important thing is this little ball here, and it allows you to do a lot more precise movements with less actual movement. So rather than like going all over the place, just a slight little motion can control your mouse. Again, this isn't going to be something which works for everyone, and there's so many different varieties of mouse, but I picked this one because this one actually rotates and it just feels so much more natural. The Pros, they're incredibly comfy if you get the one that's right for you. They are extremely accurate, way more than a dodgy mouse, and you can also program other buttons. So like, let's say you're always using a keyboard shortcut, and every time you have to go it's just like it messes up your whole pattern or your flow. You can program different buttons on the mouse to work via that. The only downsides I could find is some of them can be expensive, but not all of them. The tilt options are a bit limited, and you kind of have to carry it with you, because if you go to someone else's computer, they're not going to have that mouse. And if you've gotten used to that type of mouse, it can be quite difficult to readjust back to the original one. Bob thinks too many wireless kits can lead to interference. Yes, though you can get special like keyboards and devices which can switch to different devices, which I've been looking at. Joe says the Logitech M57 is similar and great, doesn't tilt though. No thanks, Joe. Any recommendations are always appreciated. Chantel says, it's great for a sentence or two or a single word, but if you need to read a page or a paragraph, it is very disjointing and confusing. It can only read one line or text at a time. Oh, you're on about those reading pens. Yeah, I will be going on to that. Ruth says, what's the name of that mouse you shown? I do know what that mouse is called. Let me quickly get it for you. And I mean, again, I would say you've got to try different varieties and different versions of them, because, you know, each person's hands are different, and some are more suited to left-handers and right-handers. People with dyspraxia are more likely to be left-handed than the rest of the population. So that's another reason when you look at most mouses, well, when you look at most things in life, they're normally created from someone with a right hand. So this one is called the trackball something. If not, I'll send it to you. Moving on, we've got special grip pens. It's about finding a more comfortable way of holding things, and rather than having to keep like readjusting when every time your hand slips, it kind of creates like particular grooves. So there's so many different varieties of pens. For me, I don't use it as much now, but I use pens that were triangle. All my pens were a triangle shape, because for me, it just stopped my hands from slipping. And anything you can get which can avoid additional distractions or delays just streamlines your life so much more.
Can I ask a question? Can you be right-handed and have dyspraxia?
No, absolutely. Like I said, I'm right-handed and dyspraxic. All I'm saying is that if you're dyspraxic, the chances of being left-handed are a lot higher than the rest of the population.
So you can be right-handed and have a dyspraxia?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm proof. You definitely can. What we do at Exceptional Individuals is we trying to get a mini library of gadgets and gizmos where people can come and try out. At the moment, we're only based in London and our library is limited. However, this is definitely something which we're working with providers. So if any of you do work at any of these additional companies, get in touch with us, because we'd love to use your gadgets and let people have a test run. Because they are expensive. Like, do you really want to pay out like £30+ or dollars just to find out it didn't work for you? And some things aren't so easily returned. So I do agree with you on that. Amanda says children use both hands for different things. It's really common. Is it called ambidextrous, where you can use both? So it's very common as well to use multiple hands for like different things. Sunjan says wider soft/texture grip ballpoint pens are best for me. Yeah, I always had to have the fancy gel pens. Couldn't have the cheap ones. Or you can get grips that can slide onto pens to like upgrade them. Yeah, somewhat common to use left hands if you're actually right-handed and vice versa. Georgina says, if there's a specific brand for the specific grip pen that you would recommend. Do you know what? There isn't really, because a lot of the time it's just like latex or a type of plastic. If you go on Amazon and do pen grips and go with the reviews there, I wouldn't say there's not particularly better or worse, in my opinion. Sam says, William Merritt Centre is good in Leeds for trailing out tech before you buy. Oh, thanks, Sam. People with dyspraxia can really struggle with note taking, and that comes down to being overloaded with information. If your brain is being crammed with information from every angle, trying to process it, listen to it, process it, and then digest it, continue listening and writing down notes you don't forget, that's a lot of things going on. So we're going to be looking at things that can help with your writing, your stamina, your spelling, all of those things at once. But first, I want to ask you, have you used any of these for note taking? Dragon, which I know a lot of you are familiar with, your classic Google Assistant, Siri, Alexa, maybe you've used voice dictation, which is pre-built on your system, or maybe you've not tried any of them. So for Dragon, I would say I love Dragon. I rely on it so much. But you do need a good microphone, otherwise it will continuously say poor audio source, which is annoying. The other thing is I do find it does crash a lot. I think if you don't have an up-to-date computer as well, it does crash. However, it is definitely the best in the market. It's very fluent. I have a little glitch on mine where it likes putting full stops where full stops aren't needed, but I think that's because it's interfering with like another spell checker I have on the computer. So be mindful that they can sometimes interfere. The other thing with Dragon is it's no longer available in Mac. No. Why? Well, apparently it was too expensive for licensing or along those lines. So there are alternatives. If you've got a PC, Dragon all the way. But if not, if you are just a casual user, our Google Assistant on your phone is so good. When I want to use notes, I speak to my phone, and genuinely the results are so good for maybe like one paragraph. The dictation on Mac, I can recommend. Not really. I mean, when my Dragon stopped working on my Mac when I updated it, I had to go back to the native one on Mac, and to be honest, it wasn't very good. PC, I think it's not great. Let's see what else we've got. I've recorded lectures and webinar classes and mentoring systems. Oh yeah, I used to record all those as well. But one that I want to share today is Otter Notes. And this one is just a lot more multifaceted. You know, there's more going on. Otter Voice Notes allows it to be more interactive. So say you're in a webinar, or no, you're in a lecture, or you're in a team meeting. It will actually dictate multiple voices, and this is something which a lot of the other systems do not do. So for example, Dragon's great for one voice, but if you've got two people in the room, it can get quite distracted or it doesn't work great. Where Otter is able to know who's one person and who's the other person. You're also able to highlight and annotate as it goes along and take pictures which then anchor to the text being said. So it's far better, in my opinion, for note taking because it kind of tells you in real time. I'd love to know if any of you have any experience with Otter, because you can get Otter integrated in Zoom, which we're hoping to do soon, but this one is mainly for live recordings.
I've used Otters in meetings where I've needed meetings minuted, and it's been really useful.
How accurate have you found it?
A little less, it's going to sound like a funny sentence, it's a little less accurate than a well-trained dragon. But it's still pretty good. I would say it's probably very roughly about 70 or 80% it got the word correct, and when the word was incorrect, it was really obvious to me from reading from the context of the meeting.
That's really interesting, thanks. And I agree what you say. If you train Dragon software up really well, like mine knows my voice well now, it gets me. I say words like "don't" really odd, and it gets that. And particularly when you're in rooms with people who, of course, they would have never trained on your software, maybe it's better for those type of scenarios. Does Otter go to the cloud? We are not allowed to use cloud-based services in school. That is a really good point, actually, and some of these services do and do not. Can Otter be integrated on Teams? It definitely can be integrated on Google Meet. It can definitely be integrated on Zoom. Do any of... I'm not sure about Teams. Okay, it says, wow, I actually haven't heard of these or half of these names in India. Well, I'm glad that these are new to a lot of you. Before I got Dragon, I used Microsoft Word Dictate. Not that accurate, but good if waiting for another tech via access to work. Yeah, I think if you've got Microsoft Office, well, what's that one that you normally have to pay for? Office 360. That tends to be pretty good for PowerPoint. Unfortunately, if you don't have 360, I think it's quite limiting. But some of the times it's just, can I use it in the meantime until I can get access to work or be able to save up to pay for it, or maybe get my employer to pay for it. So the pros are, I think Otter is quite accurate. You do have to pay per month, and I think it's quite affordable if you're an employer wanting to support your staff. And it's a little bit more specialised than Dragon. Dragon is a really good all-rounder for speech dictation, where Otter is much better at for like note taking or for transcribing. It has some really good export options. Record this meeting or record this webinar and then turn it into a blog or a podcast. Well, this is great because what it can do, let's say today's webinar, what we currently do at EI is I'll record today, then we'll have one of our volunteers normally will watch it and write notes and then convert it into a blog. But what you could do with this is automatically convert it. You'll have a whole transcript of the writings, and then all you have to do is edit it a little bit, clean it up, and potentially you've been able to create media and more materials a lot more. It can take a little time to upload and transcribe recordings. So again, if you have an old computer, it's going to take a long time. And this is a lot of the thing with this software. Like when you're trying to justify to an employer or yourself, should I get a state-of-the-art computer? You don't need the one with all the bells and whistles. Oh, Bob, do you have something to say?
Yeah. Just adding to what you just said, there's a lot of free and open source software that is much better than Microsoft, but you've got to find it, that one that works for you.
Thanks for that, Bob. I completely agree. There is some really good free software, and today I'm doing a bit of a mixture of free and paid, just because these are the ones that I have found to be useful. Will you share any further resources with us? Yes, Amanda, I will. So this has been recorded, we're editing it, and also on our website we have lots of blogs and other resources which indicate way more. These are by far not an exhaustive list. These are just a small handful, which I don't often talk about. I tried on purpose to recommend different things than what I recommended for the dyslexia one I did, which is on our YouTube, just because if you've been to one, I wouldn't want to repeat myself. Emma says, what is dyspraxic? Dyspraxia is a learning condition which affects your motor coordination. Similar to dyslexia, but rather being phonologics based in terms of how you read, it's more like about movement. So the brain might struggle with processing at a certain speed or when given directions or information in a certain way, so it can be delayed. It can make communication more difficult. It can make fast processing a challenge. It can make things that resolve close coordination, like riding a bike, tying your shoelaces, but really it can affect every element of your life, but in varying degrees. Ooh, Bob says search FOS and get a comprehensive list. I'll do that. Not sure what it stands for. The next one is global autocorrect.
Matt?
Oh, yeah?
Very quickly, free open source software.
Nice. Okay, thank you. Thanks for that, Bob. Now, the next one is one that I actually recommend all the time for when I'm talking about dyslexia. I couldn't find a better alternative, though. And global autocorrect is one that which isn't very commonly known. And unlike most like spell checkers, they will kind of recommend solutions and you can select whether or not it's right. Global autocorrect will automatically change it, which is great. Again, for someone with dyslexia, it might be because you struggle with spelling, but with dyspraxia, it might just be that the keys you touch just happen to be wrong. You know how to spell it, you're actually okay at spelling, but your fingers and the keys, they just don't line up and you end up making a lot of mistakes. Now that can be really frustrating and can be quite time consuming. So what this does is like it accepts that this is just how you write. So say like I'm always spelling individuals wrong, and you know I work at exceptional individuals, so of course I have to write it all the time. I do know how to spell it, but my muscle memory or the way my fingers type just gets it wrong. So global autocorrect will just automatically convert it. It is great. Now as you can see, it isn't the cheapest bit of kit, and this is why I'd highly recommend this if you are going through access to work. If you're an individual, I would say maybe trial it first and see if it's right for you. I use it a lot, but I will say it does sometimes interfere with other software. So if you have Microsoft or Mac's spelling software, like one of their accessible features already switched on, they can kind of not play very well together, and I have had issues like that. I'm not saying that people with dyspraxia are necessarily bad at spelling. They can be amazing spellers, but it's more about what's in their head and being able to get it out and like flow, and that's normally with the way that the fingers typing and the muscle memory. So yes, a lot of the things that can help people with dyslexia also help those with dyspraxia, but maybe it helps for a different reason. So here's a quick example. Oh, sorry, you were going to say, Fasana?
Yes. Can you have nice, neat handwriting and have dyspraxia?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's, again, you're more likely to have messy handwriting if you're dyspraxic, but it's not essential because a lot of the time you can really train your brain or focus on one area and become really good at it. And a lot of the people who have messier handwriting tend to have co-occurring conditions, so they may also have dysgraphia, which is more purely based on poor handwriting. So yes, you can have good handwriting and be dyspraxic.
Thank you.
Now, as you can see on here, it gives you an idea. So let's say you spell exam like ECZAM. That's not because you do not know how to spell exam, it's just because your fingers didn't type what your brain had in mind. And rather than having to right click, did you mean, it can just automatically correct that. But also, if you were to write this, say, in Word, which has an automatic spell checker already there, it's not going to know what you mean because that word just doesn't recognize it. It works better on PC than it does Mac, but they are always updating it every time. So my personal recommendation, great piece of software, maybe see if you can get access to work, pay for it. I personally think it's a bit overpriced for individuals. So here's the pros. It autocorrects, no more wasting your time, straight away. I love Grammarly, but Grammarly you have to manually go check through things. I wish Grammarly had an auto feature because a lot of the time I'm correcting the same mistakes time and time again. It has a very large word library, so it knows most words and it's always updating. But even better, you can add words. It works on PC and Mac. It didn't always work on Mac, now it does. I still think it's gotten PC a bit better though. And you can upload your own words. So let's say, part of my job, I'm always writing ATW, an abbreviation for access to work. And obviously that isn't in the dictionary. So that would be very annoying if it kept changing that. You can actually say, whoa, 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 that's a real word in my vocabulary. Leanne says, is this something the schools use? I don't know, actually. I don't know if schools use this or not, but I would imagine maybe not, because at school age, you still have the capability, or, you know, they're still actively trying to teach you to spell these words correctly. I would say this software is better for adults because it's not going to teach you to spell correctly or kind of like help you remember. It's just saying, you know, you cool, just stay how you are, and it will just keep moving things along. So the cons is it can't correct two similar words. So let's say you've got words which, you know, I'm trying to think of an example. Maybe like dog or god, because they're so similar, it's not normal. It's not super smart. It's not like AI where it's able to work out what you actually meant. It normally just looks at the word and goes for like the nearest equivalent. It doesn't have grammar correction, and if you particularly struggle with grammar, this isn't going to help you. And it doesn't underline what words have been created. So if you're typing really fast and then you look back at it, you're going to have to read it and see, is it correct? A lot of the time, this software, you kind of got to trust it. Bob says, with recent developments in AI, we can hope for better and cheaper options. Absolutely. AI has helped us dramatically, and I think it's only going to keep on helping people who are neurodiverse. It's also resource intensive. It's a little bit of kit, but it does slow the computer down. That's kind of my number one tip overall, is if you are going to be relying on this software and equipment, make sure you have a computer that can handle it. Have you used any free spelling alternatives? So these are other ones. I'm just curious to know if you use them. So anyone who use Grammarly, anyone that just uses the standard Microsoft spell checker, maybe you use a smartphone voice assistant. So that's where you like, oh, how do I spell that word? La 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 la. You talk to your phone and then it spells it out. Or maybe you've not used any. Ginger, I've never used that. Grammarly. So I use both of those. For me, I love Grammarly. I actually write natively in Grammarly and then copy and paste it into words, because I do think, for some reason, Grammarly works differently on the app than it does on the Chrome plugin. I don't know if anyone else has found that, but I do rely on it a lot. What I typically do, and this is, don't get me wrong, this is a really long way of doing things. I speak using Dragon, I write on this little like Dragon notepad, then I copy and paste it into Grammarly, I correct it, then I paste it into the main document, and then I use like a reading software like Claro Read to read it back to me. It's a long process, but it works for me. April says there are also spell checking features in the Apple Notes app and used in email providers I use. Yeah, they are quite common. Sense check as well as spell check. Perfect. Now this is another one, text to speech. So you've got the text and then it reads it back to you. Now, I often recommend Claro Read, or the ones that are automatically built into your computer. And are they the best ones? They kind of are the best ones. But why I'm recommending a different one today, Balabolka, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but why I love this one is it's completely 100% free. Like, there's another one I use which is called Natural Reader, which is great, but also it limits you, so you can only use so many words a day. This one isn't perfect by any means. It might not sound as natural as some of the paid ones, but you can use this online anytime you want. There's no limits. So definitely worth doing, because with dyslexia you may actually struggle with the reading, so having it read back to you is useful. But with dyspraxia you might struggle with comprehension, so being able to, you can read the information but maybe it's not really sinking into your brain. Having things read back to you can be very useful. So we often get a lot of people saying, I don't need any help reading, but I'm like, well, do you actually take in or understand what you're reading? And they're like, not really. So this is why it can be quite useful. Yeah, so I would only say this software, not the best, but it is free. And for a free bit of software which you can rely on, is priceless. So I always have it on, in my brain. So no matter if I'm on a computer, which I don't use normally, that doesn't have things that I rely on, I know that I've always got other things I can use. Now, next one is back to you. Have you used any other free text-to-speech alternatives? So maybe use Google Translate. What? Google Translate's great. So if you want to have something read back to you, paste whatever you want into Google Translate and translate it to English. So English to English, and then you can click the little button and it reads it back to you. A really easy way to remember if you need some software which can read back to you. You've also got the pre-inbuilt one on PC and Mac. The one on PC I don't like, but the Mac one, I use it all the time.
Minimizing certain movements. The trackball is a long-standing alternative to the traditional mouse. That's had.
Yeah, really good. And if you play around with the voices, there are really good ones. So the American one sounds too fake. The British one sounds so cringy. But for me, I really like the Scottish one, the voice Fiona. I think, for me, she sounds quite natural. So play around with it. Natural Reader, as the name suggests, it sounds quite natural. I really like it. And if you only need to have like 1 or 2 paragraphs read out, you can use it for free. However, if you're using it all the time, then you'll have to pay for it. And Claro is the one which is always recommended. It's a good basic one, normally recommended for access to work because of the price. The reason why I do not always like Claro is you've always got to open it up. I like things which, I just use a keyboard shortcut and it reads straight away. Claro for me, I find a bit fiddly and also resource intensive. But admittedly, they're a game changer for me. Leanne says, my daughter uses Google Translate in her Spanish class. Nice. Chantel says, I love South African voice on my Apple. They are the easiest for me to pay attention to. I like that as well. Like, they might not be created with you in mind, but if it works for you. A few more. Scapple is a mind mapping software. And once again, we normally recommend MindView, or you might use MindJet. But the reason like Scapple is good is it's very simple. It's bare basics, user friendly, and it feels more natural, like drawing. And there is a paid version, but you can try it for free. I think if you don't want something with all the bells and whistles and something which is just easy for getting your notes on the paper, this is a really good one. And it's relatively new. So as you can see here, it just seems a little bit more rawer, just because I think the style is more stylized to feel like natural mind mapping rather than Microsoft PowerPoint when you have it like, your clear bubbles. So the Pro is very user friendly. I also use one called Coggle, which is by Google, really great as well. It's visually clear, and for me, as a visual person, I need it to be really simple for my eyes. There are many views, so you can change how it looks to suit your own style, and it's great for planning. Mind maps aren't for everyone. Some people love them, some people swear by them, others just can't get around to it. April says, MindJet is now called Mind Manager. Thanks for that, April. So the Conzo is it's very basic. If you are going to use mind mapping every single day, use something like Mind Manager or MindView. If you are just using it for the odd thing here and there, I would say it's a very good option. But what ones have you used? Have you used things like Coggle, which is a free Google service? Very, very basic, but also easy. Microsoft Office, a bit clunky, but if you're already using Microsoft Office every day, continue using it. MindView, which is the one that we normally recommend, is a very, very capable bit of equipment. However, maybe it does too much. Sometimes if something does like everything under the sun, it can make it more confusing. And we've got others. So I'd love to know, maybe some of you just prefer the old paper and pen method. Completely fine. Rennie says, I have MindView and don't like it. I used it a lot at the beginning, but I have used it less and less. And because sometimes, I don't know. I think it's difficult. A good assistive technology is something that years later you're still using. I think so many things look really cool at the beginning, but then the novelty wears off. Jenny says, Aoya? Something like that, but I couldn't get into it. Never heard of that one. Oh, Bob says there's a lot to follow up on. I'm glad you're finding it useful. I want to mention another really cool one that I haven't mentioned before, OrCam. OrCam helps you read text. But again, for dyspraxia, we're using this for comprehension and engagement. So we normally recommend something called Scanning Pen, which is a physical device. You scan over the pen and it reads it back to you. We recommend that because it's the cheapest one, which also does a good job. However, OrCam, though more expensive, is cooler. And this is because it's a little device and you just like hover it over any text or on your screen and it reads it back to you. Why this is great, because either you have software which will read what's on your computer screen, or you have a little device which will read a physical book, but they normally can't do both. This, however, can read your text on your screen and it can read physical books. So really, really cool. You get an idea. See, look, here, he's not scanning it right on the page like other smart readers. He's like holding it above. And as you can see here, all it is a camera and they've got sensors. So it's able to read the entire page or little paragraphs. And you can also, let's say you've got a book that you want to scan into your computer. You can just take a picture and it scans it to your computer and then it converts it into text, which you can highlight and edit. Really cool. I find mind mapping, I don't mind, much better than the scanner you currently use. I would say this is really good. I tried one a while back at an event and it was not very accurate, but they have improved with accuracy. Yeah, Sam, they have improved a great deal with accuracy, and they are better than a lot of ones that maybe you've been provided or given in the past. Though the price, we're talking like a few hundred. So that's the main downside is that. So, but why I like it, vocal out point, it talks back to you. But not only that, it can do it via the headphone jack, unlike Apple devices, or it can do it by Bluetooth. A lot of the other cheaper ones, like Scanning Pen, as great as it is, only has a headphone jack, and more headphones these days are wireless. So this is very future-proofed. Very, very portable, fits in your pocket, so no matter where you are, no matter if you're looking at a computer screen or on a physical book, you'll always be able to read something back. You do not need any computer skills. This is literally you whack it out, push a button, reads it back. That's what I love about it. It doesn't require literacy. The cons, though, is costly. Not going to lie, this is a big expense. And will access to work pay for this? Not likely, because they'll normally always want the cheaper alternative. And if you're going to buy it yourself, I would recommend you try it out first, make something you're going to use every single day to justify it. It's awkward to scan long text. So if you're scanning like loads, it's awkward. You always got to hold it up. The spine of the books can be hard. So if you've got that crease, it can't read it. But then no other alternative can currently read the spines. And it has limited use. So as cool as it is, it really is only good for reading, text. It can't do much more. Whereas a tablet, for example, can do everything. Some free alternatives though. If you cannot afford that, there are free alternatives. So you've got Google Keep, which you can take a picture and it can convert it into text, which can read back. You've got Text Scanner, which is it looks, again, take a picture, convert it, or Text Fairy. These are just some examples. There's so many on the App Store and Play Store, but there are free alternatives. And the good thing about these ones is something is only good if you have it available. And you always have your phone on you. This one is brand new, and it's a Livescribe Symphony SmartPen. You may have heard of Livescribe before. This is something that we normally recommend at exceptional individuals, a digital pen, but this is a brand new one, and it's miles better than the previous version. So if you tried it before and didn't like it, this is worth it. Basically, you write out physical, and it converts it digitally. Nice and cool. So like here, you draw on the book, and then it automatically converts it onto the book. Perfect for dyspraxics because we lose things a lot. And maybe you've got really important notes and you do not want to lose it. Well, if you do lose it, not a big deal because you've got a digital backup. The great thing about this new pen is it can transcribe 27 languages, just in case you know them. You can sync your notes to the app, and you also get extra things with it. But the downside, because again, we're being neutral here, is it only works on their dotted paper. So you can print the dotted paper, which is pretty cool, but you can't use this on a normal book. It has to be done on their notepads. Sometimes there are pairing issues, and I'll be honest with you, I've experienced this, issues where it just hasn't paired up very well. They're not big, and you can normally like on and off again, and it's easy to rectify, but it's worth knowing, particularly if you're spending a decent amount of money on it. And the notepads and ink refills are sold separately. They're not expensive, but knowing that you're relying on one provider to give you the refills, is not a great method, because obviously they could do anything with the price, or they could go bankrupt. Jenny says that would revolutionize my life. They are really good, and I used the older version for many years. However, for me, it got a bit too buggy towards the end, so I stopped using it, but I would love to try out this one. Rennie says, I looked at this and decided a Rocket Book Notepad was a cheaper alternative, but you do have to scan the page. I've not used those. Thanks for that. I'll definitely have a look at those. So quick one, have you used any of these other smart pens? Maybe you used Moleskine. Moleskine is a very attractive book and pen. Very great if you're conscious about how things look. The Wacom Smart Pen, a good example, relatively new. Remarkable is like a tablet, but a tablet you can write on. So think of it like an e-reader / tablet, like a nice hybrid, or none of them. What I would say with these is, if you have a Moleskine shop around you, there's one in Liverpool Street in London, you can actually go in there and ask to play around with it, and they let you actually try it out, which I think's a very nice addition. There's a stationery company called White Lines that has a really good app for copying notes. Oh, I'll give that a go. Dictaphone, won't spend much time on a dictaphone, but great for helping you retrieve information. Not great, however, if you do not listen to it. So pros, captures data. Not great if you work in a company that doesn't allow you to store information though. Easily portable, nice and easy. Not going to spend much time on a dictaphone. The main downside is that it's not always appropriate. People get really uneasy. If you're in a meeting and you put a dictaphone on, people can really clam up and go inwards. You can also forget to play it back. I recorded all my university lectures on my dictaphone. I never once played them back. And human error. Sometimes you think you pushed record, you haven't, and then doom. Honourable mentions. Coloured overlays can help. Noise cancelling headphones to avoid distraction. Just having music playing. For some people it works. Daylight lamps, different lights which can make the brain feel active and know that it's the right time. At the moment, I've got a nice light on. Digital and physical calendars are a lifesaver. I have my Google Calendar connected up with everything, like my Alexa device, my phone, like a smartwatch, everything. So I have so many reminders possible. Alarms. And last one, are there any other equipment or text which I haven't mentioned which you think could really benefit other people today, or those who watch it later? Oh, Sunjan says, thanks, my AT at work was only for dyslexia. You know, you are able to go back to them and say, this is affecting me. Could we do an assessment for this? So you are entitled to go back.
Sorry, who can we go back to?
Who can we go back to?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, you can either come to us or go back to your provider who originally did it and just say that your situation has changed. So you are... Every time you're at a new company or your job role has changed either dramatically or a bit from how it was originally when you had the assessment, you are able to go back.
Okay, so but the question I was asking is in terms of my disability, because now we've spoken about I've been diagnosed with dyspraxia. However, I think I might have dysgraphia. So if I want to do the assessment, do I have to go back to my university to do it? Or how do I go about it? Or tell my GP?
So you wouldn't need to have official proof. That's one of the great things about it. So you do not have an official assessment. It's more about, are you struggling with those things? So you could mention, I have a lot of the characteristics of dysgraphia which are affecting me. So again, you do not have to physically prove it. You just have to be struggling with those sort of things.
Because on my dyslexia reports, dyspraxia reports, it says that my handwriting is laboured. So can I just add that I've got this dysgraphia as well, for moving forward? I
mean, you can't say you have it if you do not have it diagnosed, but what you can do is say, I have characteristics or traits of, because that will give the assessor an idea of what they're looking for.
Okay. Yeah. So, but I want to get a diagnosis for it. So how do I go about it? Do you know?
For those ones, you would have to go to a private person. It's nearly impossible to get it done by the GP for those. GPs typically can only do ADHD and autism. Normally for the others, all the DISs, you have to go to a private person.
Okay, so I was very lucky to get my university to do it for me then.
Yeah, you were.
Okay. Thank you.
No worries. Thanks, George. We've also got Sonoscent Audio Note Taker. I've used that before. It's quite cool. Basically, it just kind of like breaks down your audio into manageable chunks. We've got screen rulers for highlighting tools. Yep, I use those. And you can put like rulers, or it can change the color or the tint. Colored paper. Yeah, different lighting conditions can also really help as well. Amanda's put Trello. Yeah, Trello's great. Okay, well, if any of these sound like something that you're like, you know what, that would really, really help me, and you're currently in work, get in contact with us if you're in the UK, and we can help apply for a grant to help you get it. It only takes an hour, and it's normally completely free for you and your employer. Normally, there's a few instances, but we can chat about that. If you aren't in the UK, look at your own situations and think, is there grants available? Or if I was to pay for this, is it worth my money? Am I able to try it out somewhere beforehand? Do they have a good return policy? The thing with assistive technology that I would like to leave you on is it is not a miracle solution. It is an aid. It is something which can take the burden off. It can make things easier, but it's not going to fix everything. I see it more like a cocktail. I use a variety of things to make my life easier. It doesn't get rid of any of it. It doesn't stop dyspraxia. It just kind of takes some of the strain off. So just keep your expectations at a reasonable level. Otherwise, people tend to get disappointed by it. And for any past webinars, check out all this stuff. So you can actually go on our YouTube channel and watch previous ones. We've got webinars on dyslexic assistive technology. There's another one on the assistive technology that I use day to day. So lots more options if you want to get more great content. And that is everything. If you have any further questions, I'm happy to answer them now, but the rest of you are very welcome to go about your day.
Yeah, that was a really useful workshop.
I'm glad. Fazana, did you have another question?
I want to know if I can have a one-to-one. I'm going to college, and the college is struggling to meet my needs, and they want to know what kind of assistive technology I need to help me progress further. And I want to know in what ways you can help. I prefer my one-to-one session if you've got some time with yourself and that, because then you can draw out the things I've got. All the things I need, because I'm really struggling.
I don't do most of the one-to-ones anymore, just because of like time, but our team are really great. So Yasoda, who's here today, she does a lot of our one-to-ones as well, who's fantastic. So if you contact either me or the team, and we can definitely arrange that for you. Oh, Emma says, do you have an office in the US? Unfortunately, no, but we're definitely hoping to one day, but we can still support you, but it will have to be remote. Okay, Katie says, can you provide assessments for dysgraphia? If not, can you suggest somewhere I can access the service? We now do provide assessments for dyslexia, dyspraxia, autism, and ADHD, but to my knowledge, we're not currently doing dysgraphia. I don't know anyone at the moment because normally it's done by private individuals. But if you do happen to find someone, get in contact with us and we can put it on our list of recommended providers. We're slowly building it up.
So you are doing assessments for adults with dyspraxia?
We can support with dyspraxia and dysgraphia, but we cannot do assessments for it in terms of an official diagnosis.
Right, okay, thank you.
Katie says, thanks Nat, should I contact exceptional individuals once I am in a new job? Absolutely. The second you have a new job, contact us. The sooner you get in contact, the quicker we can support you. Because it does take time to get all the paperwork through. So just to speed up the process. So Katie says, could you provide the email address? If you go onto our website, exceptionalindividuals.com, and go to the tab looking for support, there's a button to sign up for a one-to-one. You can kind of click the time that works best for you or go on our waiting list. If not, you can email our admin address, but you'll get a much quicker response if you go onto the website directly. Okay, I think we are good there. I am going to go now. But thank you so much, everyone. So thanks, everyone.